Good morning, Angela.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Hanging in there, thanks.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, really good.
Okay, good. I should probably ask while everyone gets on, but are you controlling or are we?
Um, I, I'm controlling unless you want to control. We just have to be mindful that
Yeah, I'm good. Let's just as long as everyone's fine with it, it's been working smoothly with you doing it, and
okay,
I don't see a reason to switch it. It might be hiccups due to things like that.
okay. Hi, Lily.
Hello.
Hey, Nick. Is that you?
Yes, that's me. Can you guys hear me
Okay.
better now?
I can hear you just fine. This is
Cool.
Melissa.
So how you guys all doing this morning?
Good.
Go
It
first. Good.
was kind of complicated getting on here.
Yeah, I didn't have a link. She spelled my name wrong at first, so I didn't get it. I was like, what's going on?
I'm sorry. I left, you know what I do? It's in Maroon. I oftentimes will leave out the E in Maroon for some reason when I'm typing quickly. Because anyway, I apologize, Nick. I know that's not very.
Oh, it's all good.
And Alex, I have no idea. I've been trying to get you on for the last hour as an alternative host, and I don't know why it's not registering your
Hello?
email.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Lily?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, Angela, I'm not sure what was going on there. That was weird.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so let's cross our fingers. Hopefully there'll be no hiccups with internet connection. There shouldn't, but
Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why it wasn't working. So it's just gonna be me. David is still out with the cold. And anytime he talks, he keeps coughing. So we're gonna
Oh, dear.
he's gonna sit out this week's webinar. So he did come back negative from COVID. It's just a head cold.
That's good. Welcome, Doug.
We can hear you.
All right, so the safe harbor is basically we're a publicly traded company, don't make any investments based off of this, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
Contains
No.
forward-looking statements.
Mhm. Can you guys see my screen
Yes.
in the cover slide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not in present mode though. At
Right.
this point. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to trying to get some stuff done, and I put it in present mode, and then I couldn't do my other stuff. Here we go. Okay. See, now it's paused again. That's weird. Oh man.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning. Good luck, everyone. I will put this on mute now, but I'm sure it will be an outstanding 2 hours. So I look forward to hearing everything.
Alex, did you, I see now that I can make you a host in the meeting features. Did you see that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I'm just gonna check now again. I made you host. I remember doing this one other time when I was having a challenge with Tim Johnson. So yeah, you're now a host. So you now have host controls.
Okay.
Yeah. So sweet. Cindy, I can make you. So now I know what to do if I can't get it to work in the back end. Sweet.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's all
Sorry
these
for the
little.
change, but I had to travel. My appointments got changed, which is normal, but
Yeah.
Alex is there for you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. It was such a silly thing for some reason. And this happens every once in a while. It happened with a speaker a couple months ago. Zoom just wasn't picking up their email for some reason, even though we were using the right email, but we've got it figured out. We've got 11 attendees on. Good morning, everyone. I'm Angela Kaiser with Marone Bio Innovations, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on how to improve your rice production with biologicals. We're going to be getting started in just a minute or two. So if you would like, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. I see some familiar names on the list, but then I see some new names as well. So if you feel comfortable, go ahead and in the chat feature, which is on the bottom of your screen usually, let us know where you're tuning in from. Carlsbad, California. We'd really like to get to know some of you and learn how you work with rice. This is a newer area for Marone Bio. Milan, Italy. Can I come visit you, please? Awesome. I'll be your best friend. Sacramento, awesome. Right when the pandemic is over. When will it be over? Awesome, Eliza. That's so cool. So happy to have you on. Modesto, California. Gordon are you working with rice at all in Modesto, California? I'd love to hear more if you feel comfortable chiming in on chat. Awesome. So we're right at the top of the hour, and I'm sure we'll have more people join us as we get started. But for the sake of respecting everybody's time, I'm going to go ahead and put this in presentation mode, and we will begin our webinar. For my speakers, just a reminder, this is a recorded webinar. I'm starting the recording now. All right. So welcome everyone. My name is Angela Kaiser. I work in marketing at Marone Bio Innovations, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to our webinar today. It's a 2-hour webinar on using biologicals to improve rice production. This webinar has been approved for 2 hours of DPR credits, and the course code is right there on the cover page. When we're done with the webinar later this evening, you will receive a copy of this presentation in PDF form, so you'll be able to reference the course ID code. You'll also receive a recording of this webinar and then a quiz that you need to take and pass at a 70% pass rate in order to receive your credits. So how this will work is you need to keep all of the documentation on file for your records. And later this week or early next week, I will be sending out a certificate to you to confirm that 1, you attended the webinar, and 2, you passed with the 70% pass rate. And that should be enough information for you to be able to fill out any paperwork you need to do for your license. If you have any questions or concerns, you should have my email. If not, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat so you can contact me if there are any questions or concerns. Next, I would like to go ahead and introduce our speakers. Our first speaker has been with Marone Bio for a little while, but we are really excited to introduce him as our new territory sales manager for Northern California, and that's Nick Steeneken. Nick was born and raised in Temecula, California, and has always had an interest in agriculture, animals, and nature. His passion for agriculture led him to Cal Poly Sonoma, where Nick graduated in 2018 with a plant science degree and a minor in integrated pest management. Upon graduating, Nick worked for a large commercial cannabis greenhouse facility. While working at the greenhouses, Nick saw the need for more professionalism and education within the industry, leading him to earn his PCA and QAL licenses. In December of 2019, Nick met Marone Bio's Matt Breck, key account manager for cultivated gardens at the MJ BizCon conference. And this began Nick's journey to becoming the Northern California territory sales manager. Shortly after the conference, Nick was hired as a sales intern, and for the past 8 months, Nick has filled in for the Northern California territory, called on hemp and cannabis growers, assisted with pace setter demo trials in the Midwest, and has helped with these webinars that we're producing. So Nick, thank you so much. We're so excited to have you as the official team. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of the information you're going to be sharing about some of our products.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is truly an expert in biologicals, Dr. Melissa O'Neill. She has served in her current role with Marone Bio Innovations as the Senior Product Development Manager for the Southwestern United States since June of 2014. Prior to that time, she worked as a PCA and CCA at Booth Ranches and was formerly an employee for Dr. Beth Grafton Cardwell's Citrus Entomology Laboratory, jointly stationed at Lynn Cove, Kearney Agriculture Research and Extension Centers. Melissa holds an AA and AS degrees from the College of the Sequoias, a BS in biology from Fresno State, a Master of Science in Agriculture from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, and a Doctorate of Education from California State University, Fresno. Melissa's current research interests include entomology, plant pathology, plant health, and weed science. She is also involved with investigations centered on issues affecting women in the science, technology, mathematics, and engineering, or STEM disciplines, and the importance of STEM education to overall student success. So Melissa, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to be on this webinar today and to share some important data, field data, on how our products have worked with rice in the field. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Angela.
And last, our second hour of the webinar will be on personal protective equipment. And Lily Reyes is a worker safety lead from Gar Bennett, who will be leading that discussion. Lily is a native to Atwater, California, but now considers Fresno, California her home. She graduated from Fresno State with a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture Education and an emphasis in animal science and a minor in plant health science. Reyes has worked for the Fresno County Ag Commissioner for 3 years as an agriculture standards specialist, where she learned her foundational knowledge in pesticide regulation and what growers have to follow. Lily has been with Gar Bennett for a little under 3 years, where her knowledge continues to grow in both the pesticide and Cal OSHA regulations, and she has a sincere passion for educating growers and employees on farm worker safety. So Lily, thank you so much for being a friend of Marone Bio and taking time out of your day to present this very important information. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Nick, who's going to review what we're going to be talking about and then get into the products. So Nick, take it away. Sorry, went a little fast.
All good. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So we're going to first go over a little bit about Marone Bio Innovations. We'll lead into some product info regarding Regalia and JetAg, and then Melissa will go over some field data. I'll touch base on the product review, and we'll have time for question and answers about our products, about our fit into rice, about anything you want to ask, we'll answer it. And then we'll talk about some laws and regulations. Next slide, please. All right, so we are a publicly traded company, and this presentation may contain forward-looking statements. Please do not base any investment decisions on them. Always do your outside research. And yeah, we're a publicly traded company. So we were founded in 2006 by Pam Marone. She was with us. She's still with us. She's no longer our CEO. However, Kevin Helash has replaced Pam. She's still on board though, and her vision is still shared by everyone at the company. We want to make the world a more sustainable place through agriculture, essentially. We're headquartered in Davis, California. We have a pretty sweet lab facility there. And most of our product is manufactured back east in Bangor, Michigan, what we call the Triple M facility. We have a nationwide sales and support team. So sales would be like myself, Doug, Taylor, Brian, those are the California, Alex, as well as, and Cindy are the California reps. And then we have all across the country reps like that. Have about 5,000 patents right now on different microorganisms, and we've researched and screened over 18,000 microorganisms. So here is our product portfolio. Really, we're known for Regalia, our biofungicide. That's what I'll spend most of my time talking about today, but I'll go around the list and introduce you to them all in case you're not familiar with it. We have Magistine, which is a bionematicide, which is pretty cool. If you're growing something like potatoes, they use a lot of that. Stargus is one of our new biofungicides. It's a bacillus strain that's pretty unique and very effective against downy mildew and things like that. We have Pace Setter, which is our plant health product for row crops. If you're out in the Midwest, you should know about Pace Setter. We have JetAg and Jet Oxide, which are peracetic acid products. I'll be talking more about JetAg as well here coming up. We have Grandivo, which is one of my favorite products. It's a bioinsecticide. It's actually a heat-killed soil bacteria. It's very effective and very safe as far as worker safety goes and residues, things like that. We have Venerate as well, which is another one of our bioinsecticides. We have Haven, which is a heat stress manager. And that sums up our products, but today I'm really talking about Regalia and JetAg. So Regalia Biofungicide. Regalia is a plant extract of giant knotweed, also known as Raynuta saccharinalis. I'm sure I butchered that, but I'll do my best. It really is most effective as a preventative fungicide, and it promotes overall kind of plant health. So for rice, you'd be using it 1 to 2 quarts an acre. I'll get a little bit more into the mode of action, but we do have a frat code. We're P5, and it's highly tank mix compatible. You can mix it with almost anything you can think of. Always do a jar test, of course, to make sure it's compatible, but in our past, we have noticed it's extremely compatible. And as far as rice is concerned, you can do foliar and aerial applications of Regalia. In other crops, that's a little bit more broad. You could, get into some dips and things like that. But today we'll really focus on the foliar and the aerial applications in rice for Regalia. So Regalia is really cool. I'm really passionate about this. This is actually why I joined Marone, because I think it's an amazing product. So there's multiple things going on inside the cell when you apply Regalia to it. You're going to strengthen your cell walls. You're going to produce more free radicals inside the cell, and you'll have more PR proteins, more phytoalexins, things that are going to be essentially antibiotics inside the cell. So the goal of Regalia, we're not going to go out there and kill the pathogen on the surface. We're going to prevent it from getting in the cell and make a stronger plant while we're doing that. So we'll be strengthening the cell walls, inhibiting pathogen growth, and then we also have Regalia stimulates the production of chlorophyll inside the cell. So you're getting a little extra energy boost inside the plant as well. And that's really one of the key things we're focusing on here in the rice, is how it can promote the plant growth and the plant health. As you know, there's many factors that go into determining the yield in a rice plant. But if we can really reduce the stress right there at the end stages as it starts forming all the grains on the rice, that is a very important thing. That's really where we shine here. So Regalia is labeled for a lot of diseases here. We have powdery mildew, rust, septoria leaf spot / speckled leaf spot and blotch. We have sheath spot and blight. We have stem rot and smut. It is also, in the rest of the country, not California, it's labeled for rice blast and tan spot as well. Those are currently not on the California label though. So that is a restriction we have here. Regalia, so we're really looking at the improved plant health. Melissa will talk more about the actual numbers and data going forward, but what I want you to take away from this right now is that using Regalia will hopefully lead to a better ROI for you. It might cost a little bit to apply, but if you're getting a good bump in yield, that's really what we're looking for. We are OMRI listed, so we can be used in organic production. We are MRL exempt, meaning that we don't have to worry about residue tolerances using Regalia, so you can ship your product throughout the world without having to worry about testing for this residue. We have a 0-day post-harvest interval, requires minimal PPE, basic stuff, gloves, masks, gloves, goggles, things like that, nothing crazy. We have a 4-hour REI time, and we are highly tank mix compatible and can be used in conventional and organic programs. So Applying Regalia in rice is really important depending on what you're doing. So if you're looking to improve your yield, the boot split stage is where you want to apply. And that's right after panicle initiation, beginning of heading right there. I'm sure you rice growers know down to the degree day exactly when that is. I'm still learning a little bit. If anyone wants to teach me more about rice, I'm always happy to learn. So please reach out and let's work together. So for ground applications, you would apply it in 15 to 40 gallons per acre. I know most of the rice in Northern California is sprayed via airplane crop duster. So we'll talk more about that in a second. You really want to apply Regalia preventatively. This goes for rice, this goes for almonds, this goes for grapes, this goes for any crop. You get the best effect with our biologicals using them preventatively. If you're going to maximize yield, you really want to apply at the boot split stage. And we recommend repeat your application 7 to 10 day intervals. That's always depending on climate conditions, disease conditions. There's many factors that go into that equation. And higher disease pressure, we recommend tank mixing with another fungicide. We'll talk more about that as well in Melissa's slides coming up. So foliar application on the ground, a ground foliar application, you're looking at 1 to 2 quarts per acre versus an aerial application. We're looking at half a quart to 1 quart an acre with a minimum of a 5-gallon spray volume. Repeat applications in 7 to 10 days, apply at the boot split stage to maximize your yield. So JetAg is a newer product from Roan. We added it into our portfolio in the last year. It's a parasitic acid product, so it's a broad spectrum fungicide, bacteriocide, algicide. It'll control foliar and soil-borne diseases. Like I said, it's a parasitic acid product, so it's a mix of like a hydrogen peroxide and acetic acid. And it's very, very stable in the jug on the shelf. Once you spray it out in the field, it will rapidly degrade. It'll oxidize the target pathogen, and then it will rapidly degrade, break down into very innocuous byproducts. So it leaves no residue. It is OMRI listed, MRL exempt, has a 0-day post-harvest interval, 4-hour REI interval, or until the spray is dried. That's kind of application method depending. And it's very tank mix compatible. There's a few metal products you don't want to mix it with. It does have a signal word of danger, and that is because it is an oxidizer, and you wouldn't want to get it on your skin. That would oxidize your skin, give you a little burn, kind of bleach you. So always be safe using it. Use your proper PPE. I touched on this a little bit. Parasitic acid is extremely biodegradable. Once you spray it out, it will oxidize while it's in the liquid form. And then as it dries, it breaks down into totally inert byproducts, which is pretty sweet. That way there's no contamination in the environment or anything like that. And it's a very effective contact mode of action. The EPA doesn't regulate it. It's exempt from regulations on residues, like I said. It breaks down into oxygen, acetic acid, and water. So JetAg is labeled to be used in many sites. As far as rice goes, we're really looking at the foliar spray treatment in the field. One limitation we do have with JetAg right now is that we do not have an aerial application label, but I know there are a lot of guys up there with tracked ground rig spraying, so this is another option for those guys to use. So I just wanted to put that out there. And there is, I'll touch on that later anyway. So we have a huge label for JetAg. It is basically anything you can think of. If it's green and it grows, it's probably on the label. So we're really focused on rice and wild rice right now. So those are all on the label. JEDAG has a lot of diseases on here. The ones really focusing on rice would be leaf spot, rust, and smut. And any pathogen on the surface that JEDAG contacts, it will oxidize and kill. So if we can contact it with JEDAG, we can kill it and hopefully control it. We'll turn it over to Melissa here for
Thank you so much, Nick. Appreciate that review of the products, and good day to everyone on the call. Thank you for joining us here. I'd like to present some of our field research data from a product development point of view. We'll cover several slides, the first of which will be talking about Regalia utilized along with Quadris. I'd like to do a bit of orientation before we get started to the general slide layout. You'll see a treatment timing table, which lets you know the date as well as stage that the materials were applied at. That's in the lower right-hand corner of the slide. Generally speaking, it is on this slide. We'll talk about our y-axis, which in this case is the dry weight in pounds per acre. We're looking at Quadris as our standard here, 10 fluid ounces per acre, which is the leftmost bar in the slide. It was about 10,500 pounds per acre in dry weight. Also included was a Serenade mix along with Quadris, a Serenade at 1 quart per acre, added to Quadris at that same rate at 10 fluid ounces per acre, and we saw a bit of boost in dry weight along with that standard tank mix. However, we have something known as a BioUnite program on the right-hand bar, which is in purple. BioUnite is Marrone Bioinnovation's way of harnessing the power of chemistry along with biological products. And in doing so, we often see synergism, which is an additive effect of two different materials greater than when either one is applied alone. So we'll talk about BioUnite throughout this program. In this case, it's Regalia at 1 pint per acre added to Quadris, the 10 fluid ounces per acre rate. And what we saw, that additive effect that I referred to as synergism, was about 1,400 pounds greater in the Regalia Quadris BioUnite program on a dry weight per acre basis. So we'll move on to our next slide, and we'll talk about stem rotten rice. Here we had yield in pounds per acre measured on the y-axis. The treatment timing was only one treatment, mid-August at heading, in this case. We have the untreated control in brown on the left-hand bar, and we see the yield was a little under 6,700 pounds per acre. Unfortunately, Quadris applied alone here under-yielded the untreated control, so something was going on there. However, we did include Regalia, in this case 38.4 fluid ounces per acre at that same heading timing. That gave us a very nice yield boost above the standard Quadris and definitely above the untreated control that we see all the way on the left. This just speaks to Regalia's plant health benefits as well as its fungicidal properties. Nick went over how Regalia functions within the plant, boosting chlorophyll and making the plant more robust in general through enlarging the cell walls and preventing pathogens. So this is one example of those effects. Here we have another study against smut on rice, and we're looking at one treatment timing, the treatment timing table there, late boot. That happened to be in late July of 2018 for this study. Dr. Espino with the University of California Cooperative Extension, or UCCE, helped us with this study on the variety M208. And the yield in pounds per acre is what we'll be considering as usual. There are many different products included in this study, partially because it's a university study and those tend to be broad. We have the untreated control all the way on the left in brown, and we can see kind of that a little bit above 8,400 pounds per acre yield. Quadris there and Quilt Excel, as well as Therm X70 moving right on the graph, excuse me. Therm X70 is 70% concentrated yucca extract for those that may not be familiar, and Stratego. Regalia is sitting right in the middle in the dark blue or purple color, depending on your screen. And that 2 quarts per acre rate of Regalia at the late boot timing gave a nice boost in yield above all of the other inclusions in the study and was even higher than the standard quadris that we typically use. But training your eye to the untreated control and then looking at Regalia, that is quite a dramatic increase and speaks to both disease control as well as plant health effects of our Regalia product. We'll chat a bit about rice dockage, which, for lack of a better term, is rice plants leaning over and becoming ruined and unharvestable due to that fact. So Jim Cook with CCFS, or Colusa County Farm Supply, helped us with the study up in Williams. The timing was at 50% boot split, which was early August in 2016. Percentage of docked rice here on the y-axis. Fortunately, it didn't get too awfully high. There was not an untreated control because of it being a commercial study, or we might have seen higher dockage. But looking at the general lay of this slide, we want to see a lower percentage of docked rice. So the lower bars are what we're striving for here, because the less dockage, the more harvestable. You might notice we have a couple of BioUnite logos appearing there again. As I've discussed before, chemistry plus a biological product is included in that concept. So we had Quadris by itself on the left-hand side of the slide, 10 fluid ounces per acre. Serenade 1 quart plus that Quadris. And then Regalia 1 pint per acre plus Quadris. And the Regalia added to Quadris brought down the dockage compared to either Quadris applied alone or that other program of Serenade and Quadris. But when we bump the rate up on Regalia, looking all the way over to the right-hand bar, Regalia 1 quart per acre plus Quadris, 10 fluid ounces per acre, still at that same boot split timing, we saw the lowest percentage docking out of all of these treatments. So either way, whether you went with a pint or a quart of Regalia added to Quadris, the docked rice was lower compared to adding Quadris in the tank alone. We'll talk about docking a little bit more. Here we have a 50% boot split in mid-July. Jim Cook again with Colusa County Farm Supply helping out. Docked rice here on our y-axis, it is in percentage. Untreated control in this study, you can see 0.3% of docking in the untreated control, which was similar to the standard in the study being Serenade at 1 quart per acre applied once at 50% boot split. We again looked at 2 different rates of Regalia, moving your eye to the right-hand side of the slide. The 1 pint per acre rate, kind of in the middle purple bar, it brought down docking below the untreated and Serenade, but 1 quart per acre brought it down even more. Again, either rate reducing docking, the 1 quart being a bit preferable here. Now we're looking at the harvested rice damage. So after harvest, doing an assessment to see between disease or other defects, what percentage of damaged rice occurred, in other words, lost yield. Treatment timing, 50% boot split, the 18th of July. Percentage of damaged rice, y-axis, and we'll look at our standard here, Serenade ASO 1 quart per acre, added to Quadris at 10 fluid ounces per acre. Excuse me. We have several different permutations of Regalia. Regalia was included by itself standalone at 1 pint per acre or 1 quart per acre. Those would be the middle bars here. The 1 pint per acre reduced damage below what was seen in the standard, but again, the 1 quart per acre rate of Regalia alone really shown compared to 1 pint. BioUnite program there on the right-hand side of the slide, we're adding Regalia to Quadris either at 1 pint or 1 quart. Either of those reducing the percentage of damage far below what was seen in the standard program, which is Serenade plus Quadris. Another good win for BioUnite. And we can move to our next slide, where we'll talk about some specific diseases, 3 to be exact. If you look down to the bottom portion of the slide above the text box, we'll see 3 different colors in our legend. The brown will give us the average disease rating for aggregate sheath spot, and the purple, the same, but for stem rot, and then green, considering panicle blight. The treatment timing for this study, as you can see in the table upper right-hand side, was at the 3 to 5 leaf stage, which was the 18th of June in 2019. The variety, M206, was examined by Dave Sills of Sills Ag Research. And what we were observing in the untreated control, which is on the leftmost cluster of bars here, is that both the average rating of aggregate sheath spot and stem rot was rather high. A 1 to 10 scale, with 0 being no disease and 10 being completely covered. We saw those 2 diseases, sheath spot and stem rot, being comparatively higher. Average panicle blight in the green for the untreated was lower, but still present at a minor level. Now let's look over to the right portion of the slide with our Regalia Biofungicide program, which included Regalia 1 quart per acre. Excuse me one moment, I'll take a drink. Thank you for your patience. Regalia 1 quart per acre in the Regalia Biofungicide program, that was added to azoxystrobin, which was at 12 ounces per acre, along with propanil 6 pounds per acre. And if we look at either the brown bar aggregate sheath spot or the blue bar stem rot, we saw a good reduction with adding Regalia into azoxystrobin. The panicle blight, even though it was low in the untreated control, we saw absolutely no disease over in the Regalia Biofungicide program. So it showed that we actually were able to knock that out since it was present at some level in the untreated. And I believe that will be it for my slides. Thank you so much for your attention, and I'll turn it back over to Nick. Nick, take it away.
Thank you. All right, so I'll go over a little product review here. So Regalia, product features, we're MRL exempt, 4-hour REI, 0-day post-harvest interval. We have a FRAC code of P5. Application information, we got 1 to 2 quarts per acre. Apply a boot split stage from yield increases with a 7 to 10 day interval. Active ingredient is giant knotweed extract, and we're OMRI listed. JetAg is our broad spectrum fungicide, bacterial-side, algae-side. It's highly stable and compatible. You can use it foliarly, or you can use it many ways, but for rice, you would use it foliarly, but you can also use it as a chemigation treatment, a soil treatment. You can treat your irrigation or your spray tank water with it as well. Active ingredient is peroxyacetic acid, hydrogen peroxide. In the jug, it's peroxyacetic acid, 5%. That's really doing the heavy lifting. Melissa touched on our BioUnite program, did a wonderful job explaining it. Really, what BioUnite comes down to is getting the boost you see from applying a biological with a proven performance track record you have with chemistry. We're not asking a grower to go out there and stop spraying their chemistry. We're saying, hey, try adding this Regalia into your tank and see if you get better results from it. So as far as rice goes, we're recommending 1 quart per acre Regalia, and that's tank mixed with either azoxystrobin or propanol plus propanol. That would be azoxystrobin at 12 ounces per acre with propanol at 6 pounds per acre. Or you could go Regalia 1 quart per acre with Quadris 10 fluid ounces per acre. And if you have a different preferred fungicide that you typically use, you could tank mix it with that as well, most likely. And that would give you a BioUnite program. You're good. Okay, so starting in the Northwest, we have Lois. She covers Washington and Oregon. If anyone's up there, we have a whole bunch of people down here in Southern California. I'm not going to go over everyone right now. We have Tim Knight, our national sales director, Matthew Bretch. He's the cultivated garden, so greenhouses, cannabis guys. He's the guy that you really want to talk to. We have John Driver up here in the upper Midwest. We have Steve over in the Northeast. We have Brad in the Midwest. And we have Hal down there in the South. So maybe Hal and Brian might have a little bit of rice down there as well. We have an awesome support team. You guys met Melissa today. She covers the Southwest. We have Morena, who does the Pacific Northwest. Brian Mueller does the Midwest Great Lakes. We have Steve Bogash doing the Northeast. And we have Dr. Tim Johnson doing the Carolinas and the Southeast. So reach out to them for any questions you have, any research collaborations you want to do. They're the people you want to reach out to. So if you guys need more information, you can scan this link here. It'll pop up a little menu on your phone, give you a couple of different links to click on, some pretty cool information, some links to our other webinars, product info, things like that. And turn this back over to you now, Angela.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you,
Nick. So we're going to go ahead and pause here. Actually, we're going to move questions towards the end. So if there are any immediate questions right now, we'll just pause and take a little break. We're doing great on time. You can put your questions in the Q&A little feature, which is on the bottom of your screen typically. While we're waiting for some questions to come in, I wanted to go ahead and we want to thank you for your time joining us for our webinar. And we have a little free giveaway, so a little surprise to celebrate the start of the holiday season. So on the screen, you can see an Olo clip, which is something, it's a universal clip that you attach onto your cell phone, and it's a magnifying glass. So you can not only magnify what you're looking at, but then also take a picture with it. So it's pretty cool. And we would like to give one away to one of our participants. So for those of you that might be, multitasking right now, if you're interested in winning this Olo clip, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and get ready to type in the chat section of the Zoom webinar. So you want to go into the chat box and you want to make sure that you're chatting with all participants because we want to make sure to see everyone's answer. It's going to be a quick quiz question, and the first person to respond and get the correct answer will receive in the mail one of these Olo clips. So are you guys ready? It's a real tough question. So I'm going to ask it in 3, 2, and 1. Is rice a seed? True or false? Rice a seed? True or false? So awesome. We've got some people chiming in, and I see Kathy is the first person. Catherine is the first person to respond with yes. So yes, rice is a seed. Thank you, Catherine. So Catherine, if you wouldn't mind messaging the panelists your mailing address, we will make sure to get one of those out to you. Awesome. Okay, I want to just go ahead and triple check. I don't see any questions in the Q&A box. Are there any questions out there about Regalia, about Jet Egg, about how biologicals work to improve rice production? Just give it a couple seconds. I know sometimes it takes a minute. All right, I don't see any questions. If questions arise over the course of this next section of our webinar, don't hesitate to type in the Q&A box, and we'll make sure to, again, make some time for questions at the end of our webinar. Okay. All right, so the next portion of our webinar is the personal protective equipment, the PPE section. And we have our guest Lily Reyes from Gar Bennett, who will be going through this next portion of the webinar. So Lily, take it away.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, you sound great.
Awesome. All right, so we are going to be talking about pesticide safety with the products that we just heard about earlier. We also have to consider the pesticide safety of it. So this pesticide training usually comes with the written HAS communication and with the series or the pesticide safety information series for the A8s or A1s through the 8s, 8-9s. But something that growers also need to remember, or something you guys can tell your growers, is that they need to be able to maintain these records. And that is the training, all the safety data sheets that are being used for the pesticides. That's going to be for the employees' safety. Go to the next slide. So this is what the leaflets looks like. This is the A8 leaflet. And here you have a lot of the emergency medical care that's already pre-planned for that employee. So in case we're ever putting down Regalia, we get it in our eyes. We know exactly where to go. And this is also in benefit, again, to the employee. And also the employer needs to have this pre-planned out before these applications take place. Application specific information. So whenever we are applying a pesticide, herbicide, fungicide, they need to be in a central location where any employee or say a state official can go on the property and look at the time or look what has been what is being applied during that time. Date and time the application will be on there. So the restricted entry intervals are going to be on there. The pesticide product name, EPA number, the active ingredient, and a copy of the safety data sheets are going to be on there. Usually that gets displayed within 24 hours of completion of the application. Something to remember on this too is if that application is starting at 10:40 a.m., we cannot be rounding up these numbers. We cannot be rounding up to 11 a.m. We cannot be rounding up to or rounding down to 10:30. It has to be exact, just in case if there was ever a pesticide drift or somebody got sick, the county can kind of dial in onto that area and see who was applying certain times and days, with, of course, the use reports. So it's always good to really be, specific with the time as well. And then state and federal regulations require training before employees are allowed to handle pesticides. So who can train? It's going to be a California certified commercial applicators, a certified private applicator, pest control advisor, UC extension advisor, or others. Of course, they need to have knowledge on pesticide safety. Labels get trained on, REIs, PPE, safety data sheets, all that good stuff gets trained on prior to them actually handling, servicing equipment, mixing and loading and transporting a pesticide. So that's something that everybody needs to be doing prior to, allocating those jobs to certain employees. Like I said, training employees before they handle pesticides, training employees anytime a new pesticide is being used, and then train employees annually thereafter. Something that also gets mixed on this part, or can go along with it, glyphosates, Roundups of the world, has multiple label names, different manufacturers or companies that produce a Roundup or glyphosate. As long as you train on one active ingredient, it covers all of them. So that's something that is easier. You don't have to train on every single Roundup of the world. We can just train on one and it suffices for all of them. The written training program needs to be in place as well, and must cover precautionary statements about human health hazards, the applicator's responsibility to protect persons, animals, and property, the need for appropriate use, removal, and cleaning of personal protective equipment, safety procedures for handling, storing, transporting, and spill cleanup of the pesticides, and hazards of the pesticides for acute, chronic, and delayed effects. All of this also gets covered in the annual pesticide training. Of course, it's always good to always kind of do like a run through in case something were to spill. What are we going to do? That's always encouraged to do, just so the employees can also see what needs to be done. I mean, we can sit here and talk about the safety all we want, but I find usually if we do it hands-on, it works. It sticks a little better, and they are more able to know what to do if that spill were to ever happen with pesticides. Training for each pesticide or similar groups of pesticides must be covered. Like I said, all possible routes in which the pesticide can enter the body, signs and symptoms of exposure, routine decontamination procedures, information found on the product's SDSs, first aid and emergency decontamination procedures, how to obtain emergency medical care, prevention, recognition, and first aid for heat-related illness. Heat-related, of course, pesticides does have an effect when it gets hot. So that's something also that people forget to put in consideration. But labels now have been really good about, I guess, identifying those products. So whenever we do train on those products, we also make sure that the grower PCA knows that they may need to have a different type of coverall during that time. Training for each pesticide or similar group of pesticide must cover environmental concerns such as drift and runoff, field posting requirements, potential hazards to children and pregnant women, how to report suspected pesticide use violations, and other employee rights. Emergency medical care for employees handling pesticides must be planned in advance. Like I said, those 8.8s and the A9s, your heat illness programs, all going to have that pre-planned ahead of time. We always want to be proactive on anything emergency wise. Inform the employee where the name, the phone number, and location of the emergency medical care facility. That's also good. I also make sure that, and I stress this to them, to also let them know, or a family member know, what facility or clinic or hospital they need to, or they could potentially go if something were to go, I guess, bad in the safety area. Post information in a central and prominent location, and provide a copy of the material SDS for any possible exposure. This is emergency information. Stickers like this are usually populated or created, and they're placed anywhere on the tractors, forklifts, around the area that the employee is working on, in front of their trucks or inside a window. But it needs to be visible, needs to be able to identify all those categories there. Local hospital, accident report, logbook, all that good stuff needs to be written on there just in case they need to use it, or in case they're working alone and there is somebody driving by, they see this person laying down, they can easily start calling the contact list. Handler decontamination. So assure that there's sufficient water, soap, and single-use towels for routine washing. This handler decontamination is different from the, I guess, emergency decontamination, and we'll go over that. Assure sufficient water for emergency eye flushing and washing of the entire body. Ensure that the water is good quality and temperature. One clean change of overalls must be available, and more requirements for the commercial applicators. The water part, as it being sufficient, as long as we're within a 1/4 mile of a mix and load area, we can definitely use that as our water source. But say we are further from a, was it 1/4 mile from that well or that water source, we have to have enough water for a decontamination or an emergency decontamination. So usually a lot of growers will kind of put like a 5-gallon tank of water with the tractor, either in the front or on the side. John Deere has created, and other manufacturers too have also created, that they actually go to the tractor, and it's actually pretty cool looking. It doesn't take up too much room or anything like that. But they've created, because it's a state regulation, federally regulation. So it's in, everyone's benefit to have that water source there. Personal protective equipment. Here we have this gentleman with all of his PPE. He has his goggles, coveralls, chemical resistant gloves, and he is mixing right now. Employers shall provide all PPE required by the pesticide and product label. Provide for its proper storage, daily inspection and cleaning, repair and replace any damaged PPE, and ensure that PPE is used correctly for its intended purpose. So employees must wear chemical resistant gloves when mixing and loading or applying pesticides when exposed to an application equipment. Gloves must be 14 mils or thicker. A good way of knowing that is doing a pencil test. So if you had a pencil and you were able to puncture that glove, chances are it probably isn't a 14 mils. A lot of growers do that little shortcut there. They get green gloves and everybody thinks green gloves are 14 mils when they're really not. So we can do that test. The county ag commissioners, they also do this test too, just to assure that they are using 14 mils or thicker on those chemical resistant gloves. And if it doesn't pass, it is considered a non-violation or a violation of that regulation there. Flock gloves or those with other types of non-separable liners are prohibited. Gloves used to make fine adjustments to equipment or other activities that require high dexterity must be made in the appropriate barrier material. So that's going to be if you have a mechanic working on certain equipment, they also need to be wearing some type of glove that they're able to still do the job and be protected from that pesticide residue. A lot of equipment, aero fans, it does drift on the applicator and on the equipment. So we do still need to, that's why it's super important to still wash all of our PPE at the end of the day or frequently. A lot of people do forget that part and think, okay, I'm fine, nothing else needs to be cleaned. But we still need to be able to wash everything off and make sure that we're trying to remove any type of pesticide exposure that can affect us. Leather and fabric gloves are not allowed when we're using pesticides or mixing and loading. We got to be using chemical resistant gloves. Of course, anytime we also are wearing gloves, we need to make sure that our hands are washed, just like COVID has been teaching everybody or reteaching everybody to wash their hands. We need to be washing our hands prior to inserting our hands into that glove. Of course, we have pictures there of somebody cleaning it with a water hose. That's also appropriate too. Of course, we let that air out and dry completely before using it again. And then your sleeves, making sure that your sleeves are either over it or your glove is over your sleeve. Never any type of skin showing in between that area. Personal protective equipment, we must wear the chemical resistant footwear when it's required. The apron, when we are mixing and loading, it needs to be from the mid chest to the knees when required. And then the chemical resistant suit that covers the torso, head, arms, and legs when a full body suit is required. So that's going to be like more of the extreme pesticides. It's going to ask for a chemical resistant suit under or long sleeve shirt, long pants, and then the coveralls on top. Usually your long sleeve shirt, long pants is considered your PPE. But if it requires the overalls, we have to wear the overalls. If it requires the overhead, then we have to wear that little hoodie on us. PPE and heat illness. If the ambient temperature exceeds 80 degrees during daylight hours or 85 during nighttime hours, employees required to wear a chemical resistant suit per the pesticide labels must not handle the pesticide unless the pesticide is being handled to a list of exceptions found in the regulations, or employees use cooled chemical resistant suits, or the employer provides engineering controls that reduce the temperature to the effective working environment. So it's going to be closed cabs here where we can have air conditioning in there. A lot of growers do believe that they can, not work during the heat and come and have their guys work during the nighttime, do a night shift application. But if we're in California, 85 degrees usually stays around during the nighttime. So we need to be careful on that. We do risk our guys going into a heat illness, even at night, even when the sun isn't up. There's still that chance of a heat illness happening. So if we are doing that, we got to make sure that we are following the regulations and we are ensuring that we're providing good environments for our applicators or handlers. Okay, I think we can skip this one here too. This is the protective equipment for the protective eyewear. This is a really important one. Must provide brow, temple, and protection that conforms to the curvature of your face and the side. So sunglasses, Ray-Bans, reading glasses are not considered protective eyewear. The pesticide label requires eyewear to be worn, but does not identify a specific type provided or by the compliance standards for ANSI or the American National Standards or Occupational Educational Personal Eye and Face Protection Device Code can be safety glasses, goggles, and face shields. So if it doesn't ask for anything, we can use any of those. But of course, if it says face shield, then we have to also wear the goggles underneath. But we just have to read the labels, and sometimes they're worded to where we can find, I guess, not the loopholes, but they're worded to where we can not swap them out, but we have to be able to read them all together, especially if it's a recommendation from a PCA. It's going to be multiple labels, so we always got to put all them all together, see what the, I guess, consensus of all of it. But the eye protective, the eyewear needs to be in place. That's not, I guess it's not negotiable. It has to be there. PPE exemptions. There are exemptions to the PPE whenever we are using them. However, employers shall assure that the exempt PPE is present and available for use at the work site. So just because if we're going to be following the exemptions doesn't mean we don't need to have the PPE there. Doesn't mean we don't need to have our decontamination kit there. We still need to have everything there in place just in case we need it. So chemical resistant gloves and protective eyewear are not required when applying pesticides in an enclosed cab. Of course, if that applicator or handler at any point needs to come off that tractor in the middle of a field where we're putting down this pesticide or herbicide, fungicide, whatever it may be, it needs to be there. It needs to be readily available that they can quickly put all that PPE on, the respirator, eyewear, gloves, coveralls, all that needs to be there. Using a vehicle mounted or towed equipment with sprays nozzles that are located below the employee and are directed downward. We don't need to be wearing the gloves or eyewear. Of course, eyewear is still going to be in place because if we are going into an orchard, let's just say we're applying for nuts, pistachios, almonds, we don't have a complete closed cab, but we have the spray nozzles that are located below the employee and directed downward. The eyewear is still going to be good, protect us from any branches that may be coming across as we're moving forward. We did have an incident like that earlier this year where they were applying. Gentleman was not wearing his safety glasses and did get a little eye injury. Nothing crazy happened, but he did go seek medical attention. But wasn't his first time applying, and he just thought, well, it's never happened to me. And just that one day, him not wearing his safety glasses or goggles, he did some damage. Working in situations where the handler has no liquid contact, such as a fumigant, and then using application system approved by the state that is engineered to provide a level of protection that is equivalent to or better than the required PPE. Protective eyewear is not required when applying non-insecticidal lures or baiting insect or monitoring traps. Applying solid fumigants such as aluminum phosphide, magnesium phosphide, and smoke cartridges to vertebrate burrows. And then applying vertebrate pest control baits that are placed without being propelled from application equipment. Protective eyewear, coveralls, chemical resistant gloves, and chemical resistant aprons may be worn instead if the PPE required by the pesticide product labeling, using a closed system to handle pesticide products with the signal words of danger or warning. This also applies to when a closed system to handle dry pesticide product formulations provided that are packaged in a sealed and intact water soluble package. Of course, the label is going to tell us all of this good stuff here. As far as the label is usually how I express or explain the label. It's always going to be the application and mixing information. So if it's telling us we need to be wearing a pink coverall, that's what we have to wear, or we have to mix it when it's 10:59 a.m. That's the only time we can mix it. That label is going to be super detailed on when these PPE exemptions can happen, the mixing and loading, the methods of it, all that good stuff. That label is super important to read. Not just the first 5 pages of it or the ratios that we need to be doing the measurements, but the whole label needs to be read, needs to be trained on. PPE exemptions again, working or work clothing may be worn instead of PPE. Signal words that can be caution, nothing too crazy, so like roundups. A filtering mouth face piece, respirators, or dust mist filtering respirator is required by the pesticide product labeling, then no respirator is required to be worn inside the enclosed cab if the enclosed cab has a properly functioning air ventilation system. And if any other type of respirator is required by the pesticide labeling, then the respirator must be worn inside the enclosed cab during handling activities. That's going to be more of your half face respirator, not just a regular N95. But that signal word caution is going to be your indicator of seeing how toxic it is. And we'll be moving on to that here shortly. Here we have Regalia here. Labels, I'm sure we all know what a label looks like, but there we have the signal word of caution. We have our first aids there that we always train on. If you swallow it, get it on your skin or clothing, if inhaled, or if get it in your eyes. Those are the first aids. That's why I always say this is the first aid prior to getting that medical attention. Something goes wrong, we're not going straight to seek medical attention, but we're doing the first aids first. Like that's the way we need to be approaching these emergency scenarios, performing the first aids, whether it's CPR, if that person swallows it, gets on their skin and clothing, decontamination starts. If inhaled, moving that person to fresh air. If in eyes, 15-20 minutes of washing that eye or eyes out. All that stuff has to happen prior, not has to, but needs to happen. And that way we're able to, I guess, better address that emergency scenario. Here we have the agriculture use requirements. That's usually where we're going to find, not usually, but we're always going to find the REI time. We have 4 hours. A lot of the caution labels are going to have 4 hours REI re-entry intervals. So again, nothing too crazy. If we can avoid the first 4 hours of an application, that's usually when they're the most concentrated. That'd be the best. But if we have to enter, we have to make sure that employee is trained, has been trained on early entry, and is wearing coveralls, waterproof gloves, shoes and socks, and then protective eyewear. Grandivo, another caution label. Same thing if an eye swallowed, inhaled, or on your skin or clothing. Same first aids. A lot of the first aids are similar. Still, we can't ignore, oh, they look the same as the other one, or they're made all by the same company. Still reading that label is super important. Here we have the hazards to humans and domestic animals too. All the precautionary statements are also on there. Like I said, it tells you everything that we need to know about this pesticide and how it can harm us. The personal protective equipment that we need to be using: long sleeve shirt, long pants. Here we have a gentleman, he's wearing his PPE, work clothes, long sleeve shirt, long pants, shoes and socks, gloves, and his eyewear. Some of the labels will not state protective eyewear. Some of them will just say long sleeve shirt, long pants, waterproof gloves, and shoes and socks. But of course, we always have to remember that California is California. If we're from California, then we have to be wearing our protective eyewear. Respiratory protection with N95s or anything that we need to be fit tested. We need to be using an appropriate or approved respiratory equipment in compliance with the state regulations when handling pesticides. Again, that label is going to tell us what type of respirator we need. And if it doesn't, then an N95 is going to be sufficient. The employer needs to also establish a written respiratory protection program with the worksite specific procedures. A lot of this does get ignored with growers. This part, our compliance team takes care of that for them. If anything needs to be updated, we go ahead and we do that on the programs for them. If we need to adjust certain things, our program is made to, I guess, to their operation. We're able to create it to how it works for them. Of course, we train on the maintenance of it too. We need to be, if it's a disposable one, dispose it properly, not hang it up in the middle of the orchard or by a row. It needs to be thrown away properly. If it's a half face or a full face respirator, then of course we need to be cleaning it, maintaining it, making sure there isn't any, it's all maintained correctly and ready for use whenever we do need to use it. A voluntary respirator program may be provided at the request of the employees or the permanent employees that use their own respirators. So even if we have a voluntary respirator program, that's if the employee decides to go and get their own respirator, they still need to be fit tested. And of course that gets signed off on, but that program can still be created. It's still encouraged to, and always to wear, if you have a fit test, go ahead and wear it even when you're applying Roundup. And Roundup does not require a respirator, but a lot of them do like to wear a respirator when applying Roundup. We just have to make sure that they have a fit test and they have passed it, and there's also that voluntary respirator program in place. Respiratory protection. The written respiratory protection program shall include procedures for selecting a respirator. Again, it's going to be work specific. So on the label, whichever label requires that respirator, that's what we're going to write down. Medical evaluations for the employees. They have to answer a questionnaire, gets reviewed by a doctor, and all that good stuff gets passed. And then we're able to do the fit test procedures, making sure it's nice and sealed. There isn't any way of them getting exposed to that pesticide or any fumes. Procedures for scheduled cleaning, storing, and inspecting or repairing or otherwise maintaining respirators. Training for the employees on the proper use of the respirators. A lot of people need to be more trained on the N95s with COVID and whatnot. We are seeing, I personally have seen people out in the grocery store wearing an N95 where the wire clip is actually down on their chin when it needs to be on their nose. And I think that we all need to be trained on, I think, respirators or N95s and how to properly wear them. And of course, training in the respiratory hazards that are potentially exposed during the routine and emergency situations. Again, going over the first aids, seeing what we need to be doing if we do have a leak, or we are able to, if that respirator isn't working, what do we need to do? What can we do? What's the next step? What's that emergency procedure that we need to be doing? All that is still something that needs to be talked about. We can't just, oh, here's a label, we're trained on it, be fine or be safe. We always have to, prepare for, I guess, the unexpected. Here we have some respirators, different full face and then a half face respirator. Those cartridges do have a expiration time, how long we're using them. If we use them for 8 hours one day, 2 hours the other day, 1 hour the next day, it just depends. All that, you know, that employee needs to be responsible for maintaining, cleaning it, having it in a Ziploc bag with their name on there, no sharing any of these face pieces here. The disposable ones, I hope we're not sharing those either. But they are like gold right now, so definitely take care of them, and encourage that employee to continue to take care of them. Not just, you know, be careless with them. They, like I said, they are gold right now during the pandemic era. We can go to the next slide. Pesticide toxicity classifications, again, knowing the toxicity levels, usually the higher they are, the more PPE that we need to be wearing. So the EPA has designed the signal, the signal word to help indicate to the user that the pesticide products or the pesticide toxicity levels, determined by acute short-term toxic data of the pesticide product toxicity to humans. We can go to the next slide. Caution, warning, danger, and danger poison. Caution is going to be slightly toxic, either orally, dermally, or through the inhalation. May cause slight eye or skin irritation, so nothing too major, but still, if we ever feel anything like that, we're quickly decontaminating or doing our emergency procedures on that, and getting medical attention. Warning, moderately toxic, either orally, dermally, or through inhalation, may cause moderate eye or skin irritation. Again, we're all different. It can affect us differently. Danger can cause severe eye damage or skin irritation. Danger poison, highly toxic by any route of entry to the body. So of course, whenever that's the first thing that we got to identify, how toxic is this pesticide. If we have a mix of all four signal words, we're always going to go with danger and poison as what we're going to be listening to, because that's going to be the most restrictive. The REI time is going to be probably a lot higher than the rest of them. So we always have to look at what is going to be the most, what's going to have the most effect on a body or a human. We can go to the next one. Signal words. Here we have the toxicity rating. I love looking at this one, and it's showing the handlers how much a lethal dose is. A few drops to a teaspoon for danger, a teaspoon to 1 tablespoon for warning, and then a tablespoon to a pint or greater for caution. That's just kind of like a visual for them. Since they know how to measure and all that stuff, they see this and they're like, okay, well, that's all it takes for, you know, for a danger product to harm me. Again, that's also good. I love giving them all the information. They're the ones doing the job, so they should be having all of this information, and being able to understand it. So charts like this always help if you guys ever need to find this chart. I find this chart always on Google, but it's something that they can have, and it's something that it will stick with them, stick while they're mixing and loading. And you know, more awareness has them more focused on the job, to where we're not having any accidents with pesticides. And when I say pesticides, I also include herbicides, fungicides. I include anything that ends with the side. So not just pesticides. I've been told it includes all of them, and I do it, but I don't think everybody understands that they're all just considered a pesticide. Signal word, caution here, Regalia, Grandiva, we spoke about them earlier. Go to the next slide. We have signal word. We have different type of products here. Again, indicates moderately toxic material. So again, different pesticides, signal words. I don't think it's anything to be scary. I don't think even if we have a danger poison product, it doesn't have to be scary. We just have to read the label and follow it through and make sure we're being as safe as possible with them, and encouraging our handlers and giving them everything that they need so that they're confident whenever they are applying a signal word of warning or danger, poison. It's also my job as a trainer, a job of a PCA or a job of a grower or whoever is training these individuals to make sure that, it's going to be okay. We're following the label, what it is, and it's going to be fine. Signal word danger, cotton quick, usually one that is a defoliant. So that's usually going to be corrosive to the eyes when it's danger too. So can obviously harm us more. Like I said, we don't need to be spinning it to be it's a bad product. And that's usually what pesticides get on or people that don't understand how agriculture or pesticide works. Pesticides, it's bad overall. It's not. They're used to help us all. And I think more people need to be, positive on this, and our signal words, danger, caution, warning, like I said. But just reading that label is super important. Danger indicates that the pesticide poses a dangerous health hazards, usually corrosive to the eyes, like I said. Danger, peligro, that's usually one that's going to have it both in English and Spanish too. If inhaled, or can cause severe eye damage or skin irritation. Not highly toxic if inhaled or swallowed. But still, we need to be reading the precautionary statements, and can cause irreversible eye damage. Again, different health or precautionary statements are going to be on the label. They're not all the same. We just need to be reading that label to understand fully what the hazards are. Signal word, danger, poison, always are going to be accompanied with our little skull and crossbone friend there. I call it a friend again because we're not afraid of it. We're following the label. We're using everything in place. And we're not going to see that. My hope would be we are not going to see anything like that. But of course, accidents still continue to happen. But the wording always includes, like I said, the skull and crossbone symbol, and indicates that the pesticide is highly toxic. Of course, Gramoxone there, we have a label change that has already happened. Different containers are going to be coming out for those, just to kind of minimize exposure or contact with Gramoxone or paraquat. Weevil-cide has its FMP plan that we need to be putting in place. Anything that we need, that we are using for weevil-cide, our cotton gloves, any applicator or our Draeger monitor, all of that needs to be there. It is there in place because weevil-cide is a very toxic, highly toxic pesticide or product, that they've been able to put all of this in place to prevent anything from happening. So again, reading that label and what it is asking us to do is super important. Closing mixing system requirements, that's something that paraquat, or we're starting to see a lot more, that we need to be following. Closing mixing systems are engineering controls used to protect workers from dermal hazards when mixing pesticides with high acute dermal toxicity. The employer shall ensure that employees' use of an appropriate closed mixing system, which such a system is specified by the pesticide product labeling. So this is where it gets confusing a little bit. But if we go to the next slide, I'll show you why. Oh, not this one, the next one. So we have a mixed closing system there. But so that PPE also needs to be worn that is required by the pesticide label, must be at a work site during the operation of the closed mixing system. So even though it's a closed mixing system and it's made to have like the minimal contact to that pesticide, that PPE still needs to be worn, even using a closed mixing system there. We can go to the next slide here. So tier 1, fatal if absorbed through the skin. those are the words that we're looking for in that pesticide label. So if it says fatal if absorbed through skin, we are following it to a tier 1 closed mixing system. Must be capable of enclosing the pesticide while removing the contents from its original container and preventing the pesticide from contacting handlers. Tier 1 system must be able to rinse and drain the empty container as required by the product label while still being connected to the closed mixing system. So it's doing everything that a handler would normally do, but it's being closed. Again, PPE still needs to be worn, and we're looking for fatal if absorbed through skin. That's how we're falling into this tier 1 closed mixing system. Here we have examples of a closed mixing system. Of course, that gentleman is not wearing his PPE there while still handling it. One of them is, one of them isn't. Definitely follow the gentleman on the left for that. Of course, the container is going to have a different, I guess, open and close area. Tier 2 closing or closed mixing system are those who mix liquid pesticides, not including adjuvants, bearing the statement may be fatal if absorbed through skin, or corrosive, causes skin damage, or other comparable languages. But that's the, I guess, the sentence or verbiage that we are looking for when we're going to be falling into a tier 2. Tier 2 systems must be capable of enclosing the pesticide while removing the contents from its original container and preventing the pesticide from contacting the handler. And that is it for pesticides. Again, it probably touches only about like 10% of pesticides. There's a lot more that goes into it. I could sit here and talk about it all day and go into all those like different spider webs of it. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions, ask away, or Angela, it's all you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lily. And we're well ahead of time today, so I want to make sure we spend time answering any questions that there may be out there. Does anyone have any question for Lily on the PPE or pesticide handling in general? Or of course, we have Dr. Melissa O'Neill and Nick Steenekin on to share any insight you may need for the biologicals that we spoke about. Does anybody have any questions out there?
Yeah,
Okay,
I have
go
a
ahead.
question for Lily. What is the biggest concern you see when you go out in the field, when you see something going wrong, and how can a grower address that?
It's definitely use of PPE, and the employee are often only Spanish speaking. So there's that language barrier there, but some of the like PPE that's not being worn is what we usually come across when they forget to wear their aprons, when they're mixing and loading. Their eye protection, they put it on top of their ball caps. That's something that it's there, they have it, but it's not being worn properly. So a lot of it's PPE that's our like main concern that we love to drill in everyone's head. And then them understanding the label, because a lot of the labels are only in English, they're not in Spanish. So we do, when we're training with them, I always like to go over the PPE part, and like I go through the label and I tell them, like, usually you'll find everything in this format, or after the signal word, you have your first aid. After your first aid, you have your PPE. You look for agriculture use requirements, and in that area, you'll have your REI times, and then PPE that needs to be worn. So I go through that label in a way that they can understand it, to where when I'm gone, they can look at a label and say, okay, you know what Lily told me, if I read it like this, I'm going to find that. And I also encourage them to take a picture and send it to, if they have, a daughter or a son that knows English to translate it. So I do encourage them to understand the label and do their part too, and being responsible in knowing what that label is saying and how the correct way of wearing your PPE, using it, and the mixing and the applications.
Okay. Do you have any tips or tricks to get your compliance rates up with employees that you want to share with us?
Yeah, morale, I think a lot of it, like if they're encouraging to that employee, whoever is applying these pesticides, being encouraging, because a lot of it, they do get nervous. They do get nervous when they see a white vehicle, in the field, and it's probably a county inspector. But just being encouraging and having them be confident in the work. So just also acknowledging that they are working, they're putting in good work and putting their life or their health in risk or in a line of danger. That's usually how it usually starts, like being positive about it, and just giving them a good shout out once in a while and letting them know that that employee is doing a good job. But that usually goes a long way, and it makes that employee does take their job. They do take their job serious,
Mhm.
But a lot of trainings also having that person be involved during our trainings, not just a quiet training, asking questions, checking for knowledge. That's something a lot of the growers, they do. So little quizzes, read me this label, maybe having the grower out there or whoever is supervising that application, not just supervise it from another field, but also being there,
When an ag commissioner runs into a worker in the field who's applying something, what type of questions do they usually get asked?
They're asking for if they have been trained. They're asking if they know anything about heat illness. They're asking about the pesticide labels. They're asking if they have the pesticide labels with them. They're asking where this mix and load site was, possibly what the measurements are. They're asking basically everything that we train on a pesticide handler training.
Okay. And
Checking for understanding, and that's where again we run into the issue of them only knowing Spanish and county ag commissioner or the inspector only knowing English. And usually the applicator gets nervous. They'll say no. I always tell them, you guys know the answer. You guys know that you guys have been trained. You guys have been applying this for X amount of time. Don't be afraid to say it in Spanish. Like, it's okay. So again, encouraging and letting them know that they're not in trouble, like these, monitoring use inspections are normal, and that's just the way it's going to be. There's no hiding away. Like, if they get you, they get you. They're going to ask you questions, and it's always good to be positive about them and encouraging that employee to answer truthfully and honestly.
Interesting, really good information there. So if a worker has an issue with the county ag commissioner out there and are cited for something, is that something they personally have to answer to, or is that a company?
No, it goes back
that...
to the grower. It goes to the grower. Yeah,
Okay.
so the grower needs to say the employee does not have any training at all. He had training in a different grower that he worked for. Now he works for a new grower. This new grower still needed to train him on the pesticide that he uses on this farm. All the safety of it, he still needs to provide that with him or provide it for that employee. So it all goes back to the grower. The grower needs to have all of this in place for that employee.
Okay.
So if there was a violation during that first inspection, chances are it would lead into a headquarters audit, and that would be checking in for documentation. The county would come in, set up a date, You'd give out all your pesticide training information, labels, your written programs, respiratory heat, hazard communications, all that good stuff you present to the county. And they expect all of this to be in place and to be written truthfully and actually being applied in that farming operation.
Hi, Lily. This is Melissa O'Neill. Just wanted to chat with you for a second. Now that we're all using so much technology, it goes down to the level of applicators in the field too. And just to reinforce the thought, I'm with the understanding that you're able to go ahead and pull up labels on a device in the field,
Yes.
so long as the entire label is legible and in a language that the applicator is understanding. Have you seen any issues or hiccups with that? Is there anything to look out for, or has that been
Yes.
running fairly smoothly in your opinion?
Yes and no. Back in my inspector days, I did an applicate or an inspection on a structural person, so somebody that would go into residential homes and spray the perimeters of the house for any pest that the owner wanted. Did an inspection, asked for the labels, and he said, "Oh, I have them on my iPad." And I said, "Okay, can you pull them up?" And he was having a hard time pulling up the label, pulling up his internet. So yes, we can have them on a mobile iPad computer. But if during that inspection that person cannot pull it up, it is going to be a violation. So, I mean, like I said, we can take pictures of it. Pictures are always going to be good. They're always going to be on the phones. But if we're having to log into a database or going on Google, typing in Regalia on there and it's not populating, then we don't have access to it. So yes and no.
Would you recommend downloading the label if possible?
Yeah, so usually this is actually a good question. What I like to tell the growers is split your commodities, or if you have multiple commodities, what do you use for almonds? What do you use for cherries? What do you use for onions? And during that season, you're not applying everything at one time. If say it's almonds, split it up into 4 times a year. If we're applying pesticides A through E during the months of January through February or January through April, get all those labels, put them in a Ziploc bag and attach them to your tractor or to wherever that pesticide is going to be at. Attach them there. You can have the recommendation whenever that inspector comes, you can pull up those labels and you have them ready there. You can put them on a little ring, hole punch them in, have them on the tractor, put in part of your decontamination kit. But those are ways that we can always ensure that that label is being carried with that handler. Other ones are some of them are really good about ripping the label off the container and carrying it with them, but Ziploc bags are usually a way to go because they're always going to be there.
Excellent. Are there any other questions for Lily regarding PPE, or Melissa, Dr. Melissa O'Neill, or Nick Steenekin in regards to using biologicals to grow your rice crop? Just one final call for questions. You can type it into the Q&A box, or you can, if you can't find that, do the chat. We're managing the chat okay today. While I wait for one final call for the questions, I just want to remind you again that I will be following up later this evening with a recording of the webinar, a copy of this presentation in PDF form, and you can see here there's a couple of different slides, the one at the very beginning and here in the middle of the presentation. You have the information about the course code if you need it for your DPR credits. It's just important that you've attended the entire length of the webinar, that you take the quiz that we'll provide you and you pass at a 70% pass rate. It will take me a couple days to circle back and provide you with a certificate that confirms your attendance and your pass on the quiz. So just bear with me. I will probably have it to you early next week. And of course, if you don't receive anything from me, or for some reason, sometimes these emails get sucked up in spam or, technical outer space, just email me and I will be happy to re-forward you the information. So I'm going to go ahead and type my email just in case you guys don't have it into the chat. I'm Angela with Marone Bio, and my email is akaiser@maronebio.com. So there it is. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up. I'd love to hear feedback on this webinar. If you've attended other webinars, you can provide that feedback in the chat or in an email to me. We always like to understand if this information is valuable, or maybe there was some other information that you really wanted to learn more about. Give us some feedback so we can make these webinars better, and we can help everyone in our vision and our mission to create a more sustainable world through agriculture. So with that, on behalf of Nick Steenekin, Dr. Melissa O'Neill, Lily Reyes, and all of us at Marone Bio Innovations, thank you for attending this webinar and have a happy day.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Goodbye.